So when people talk about frame gen, they usually just talk about DLSS. But there's actually three main types of frame gen: NVIDIA's DLSS, AMD FSR, and Intel XeSS. And they all kind of do the same thing, but in different ways. At a basic level, frame gen is just creating extra frames using AI instead of rendering all of them normally. So your GPU renders some frames, then the system predicts the ones in between. That's how you get higher FPS without your graphics card actually having to do all that work. They use stuff like motion data from previous frames and sometimes optical flow, which is basically tracking how pixels move between frames to make better guesses. DLSS is NVIDIA's version, and it's usually the best looking. It uses a dedicated AI hardware and optical flow data, so the generated frames are more accurate and stable. That's why it tends to look smoother than everything else, but it is also locked to newer NVIDIA GPUs, so not everyone can use it. FSR is AMD's version, and it's way more open. It works on a lot more GPUs, even older ones, instead of relying heavily on AI hardware. What am I trying to say? It leans more on interpolation and frame data, so it's more accessible, but sometimes you'll notice more artifacting or instability compared to DLSS. Then there's Intel. Fuck Intel. Then there's Intel XeSS, which is kind of in the middle. It can use AI on Intel hardware, but it also has a fallback mode that works on other GPUs. Freaking Intel Arc, bro. Stupid ass.
Bombacat!
So it's more flexible than DLSS, and in some ways can get pretty close to DLSS quality, but it's still not as widely used. So it really comes down to this. DLSS is usually the highest quality, but locked to NVIDIA. FSR works on almost anything, but isn't as precise, and XeSS is kind of the middle ground between the two. And all of them are doing the same core thing, which is predicting frames instead of fully rendering them. And that's the trade-off. You get way more FPS, but those frames aren't real, they're guesses. And most of the time they're good guesses, but other times they really aren't.